Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Brawls. My name's Matt. You don't need to know about who those two are.
But you'll find out anyway, I'm Jake.
I'm Matt.
Just one video, you gotta say your real name.
Well, I'm just angry that Matt said that about me.
That's Daniel. And welcome to Cinema Brawls.
Welcome to Cinema Brawls. Welcome to our first ever film theory video. Film theories are going to go one of two ways. Either it'll be one of us in like just a video blog or vlog, as the kids say, or we'll do a kind of like a roundtable discussion like we're doing right now. One person who will bring the theory to the table, and then we'll just discuss things about it. I'm the one with the theory today. The theory is something I call the fall of light and dark. Ooh. So here's kind of just the theory as basic as I can make it. And then I have some specific examples. I have some questions that we'll discuss as well. The theory basically goes like this. A lot of popular movie franchises are kind of getting rid of the concept of there being a definitive good guy, a light side, and a definitive bad guy, or the dark side. And a lot of movies are exploring this idea that both will always be present. For example, in Harry Potter, this is probably the earliest, most popular movie franchise that did it first, if that makes sense. In Harry Potter, at the very end, spoiler warning by the way, at the very end, Harry had to die in order for Voldemort to be able to die. They had to get rid of the light side in order for them to get rid of the dark side. And there's a lot of, deep lore about why that's the case. The play that came after the movies ended, The Cursed Child, is evidence that the dark side will come back. They defeated Voldemort, but he has a daughter somehow, still not sure. And she is trying to do evil things as well. So even after you get rid of one side, they'll always come back. Another good example of this is in the Marvel movies. A lot of the characters, not just bad guys, are moving to morally gray areas. For example, the supposed good guys seem to be going to more and more extreme lengths just to stop the supposed bad guys. And the bad guys that we've discussed before on this channel seem to have better motives than just, ooh, I'm evil and I want to rule the world. Some of them are self-preservation. Some of them are revenge for a loved one dying at the hands of the Avengers. Mm-hmm.
Some would genuinely think they're doing the right thing.
Some genuinely think they're doing the right thing, exactly. There's just a lot more complexity than just being evil.
Right.
The last main franchise I wanted to bring up that I've noticed with this theory is Star Wars. The most recent Star Wars, The Last Jedi, it has a whole big message about throwing out the old concepts and replacing it with new ones. Now, whether or not that movie successfully did it is another story.
Star Wars got on this bandwagon?
Yes.
They literally coined the term dark side.
Yes. We're going to put a link to the video from Wisecrack, the channel Wisecrack. They did a video kind of review about The Last Jedi and brings this theory up. They mention it in Star Wars a lot. Yes, they're like, this is the dark side. They're the bad guys. But every time they get rid of someone on the dark side, there always seems to be another one right behind them. Kylo Ren and Supreme Leader Snoke came out of nowhere, literally. No one had heard of them before.
Kylo Ren came from two very good people, too.
Exactly. They came just for the simple fact that Palpatine and Darth Vader died. And so, once the dark side is defeated, they always come back. Once the light side is defeated, they always come back. And Luke is kind of in the middle during The Last Jedi. He's kind of a jerk. Right. Because he's moving into the gray area. He recognizes that, and he even says, it's time for the Jedi to fall. And he doesn't mean he wants the dark side to win. He just knows that whenever one side takes over another, they'll push back just as hard. And Kylo Ren introduces the idea to Rey. He's like, enough of this choosing sides thing. We need to come together and work together. And I'm really excited to see if they keep exploring this and have some kind of direction with this in the episode 9. But
because it was smart, and Last Jedi was the best Star Wars movie we've ever had.
Whoa,
that's debatable.
Dude, we don't want to get killed here. You can't say things like that.
Their comments come through the camera at us.
Come at me, nerds.
The point is, they're exploring the idea of no more straight light side, no more straight dark side. They're trying to come in the middle. So now I want to open it up. That's the theory in a nutshell.
On one hand, yes, I agree that more movies are kind of going that way, or at least more good movies are kind of going that way. But I also think that there's always been great movies that have explored the concept of both good and bad, light and dark, in a single person. The one that comes to mind currently, at least right now, is the Godfather series, where it's this guy that's trying to do the best that he possibly can, but it's still not necessarily good, And so I think that there's less binary, but there's always been great movies that have explored the middle ground.
Yeah, I'm not saying these are the only ones. These are just the most popular ones that people will recognize. Definitely, please introduce more.
I feel like in good movies, it's more of a complex situation, but there are also really good movies where it is pretty binary. But those movies are more basic. And it definitely did happen a lot more, back then. But I think that's because movies are increasingly getting complex, and there's being more added to them every year, every decade.
Filmmaking as a medium has been able to move past kind of the infancy, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, it was just whatever we could possibly film on this one reel of film or whatever, and then even before that, people were experimenting, but as the years have gone on, there's just been so many great creative people that have brought depth to filmmaking, and I think that now there's just even more. Now that we have this generation of people like us that always grew up loving movies and watching movies, and now they're guys that are creating those movies, they're able to move past, again, the binary, the good and bad, and be able to focus in on morally complex issues, morally gray issues, things like that.
Since this has become more and more prevalent, and like you said, this is an idea and a concept that has been implemented in filmmaking for a while now. Is this a good change? Where does this lead to, basically?
Yeah, I think it is a good change because it represents how life is. Life, a lot of the times, can be really black and white, and there's definite good things you should do. But and then you go into certain situations, and those black and whites become more gray. And every person has to decide for themselves individually what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, because sometimes moral reasoning is relative.
That's very true.
And so
I think a lot of our discussions on this channel is purely on perspective.
Right.
Movies that we've grown up with and have nostalgia for, we want to fight for and we want to win, but it's hard to look at moral situations that objectively,
Right. And when movies do that, it connects us more to what's actually real life rather than just something that we're watching.
And I can absolutely see that. I am going to play maybe a little bit of the devil's advocate here, because I think that while yes, it does portray a little bit more of what real life is, and real life is just full of gray, not black or white, but should movies necessarily have to follow that? I think one great thing about movies is that they can show us a fantasy, can show us an ideal to strive for, where there is binary, where there's always someone that's good, and there's always, if there is a bad, there's always a way to combat that. And I kind of like how there is, even if it's just kids movies or kids cartoons or things like that, how there is a good and bad. I like how it teaches kind of just how to be a good person that way.
Totally. Yeah, I don't think the binary ideal thing is ever going to fully go away. I'm sure a lot of people would probably prefer if it did. I don't know, we're kind of living in a world where it seems like defining something as good, defining something as bad is bad. The definition is bad. And that's not necessarily always the case. We can introduce good characters that are objectively good. We can root for them, but they can still be deep. There can be specific parts of that character that we strive for, that we want to be more like them because of that. And there are certain characters that can be portrayed just as evil that we can see and pick out the parts we want to combat.
For sure. I mean, I love movies like, The Dark Knight, I think is a great example of kind of what you're saying, where even though Batman is objectively, at least for the audience sake, the good guy, he still does bad things.
Right, he does. But I mean, look at who he's fighting. It's the Joker.
Right.
Who is literally doing everything, just for the sake of being bad. Right. Which I find interesting, and I think that the whole binary or complex thing gives characters... It allows characters to play off of each other. For instance, with Batman and Joker, Batman does good things, like we said, in kind of a morally roundabout way to fight off someone who's just doing bad things all the time. Whereas if you look at Superman and Lex Luthor, Superman does really good things in a really good way all the time.
I mean, the good Superman.
Right. And then Lex Luthor does bad things in, a way that seems more morally correct, if that makes sense. And so they kind of both are on one end of the spectrum, but, fighting each other.
It's like they're trying to accomplish the same goal, but different ways to get there.
Right.
But then you have, all these complex heroes and villains, but still, the greatest movie of all time, The Princess Bride, is binary. There's Wesley that is the good guy. And
which is interesting because he was the Dread Pirate Roberts, who's notorious for, bad stuff.
But it does
But they
talk
make
about it.
They make a point to mention that that's all a front.
Yeah.
Dread Pirates Roberts is more of a name. Maybe the first Dread Pirates Roberts was a terrible guy, but his legacy just precedes him.
There's been 4 Dread Pirate Roberts before Wesley.
So Wesley can still remain good, but act under that fear,
Good. But you gotta admit, there's no way he wasn't still robbing.
I mean,
I'm sure he was, but then you have to go, but we don't see that in the movie. But then in the movie...
his feelings.
Didn't see it, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. But then in the movie you have Prince Humperdinck, who has the Pit of Despair. He calls it the Pit of Despair. It's not like it's a nickname that other people get. No, he calls it the Pit of Despair.
Surely a guy that owns a Pit of Despair is not someone you want to go to his dinner party.
Exactly. I mean, the Joker doesn't have a Pit of Despair.
Not yet, he doesn't. You could take a look at The Princess Bride. That's a good example. Think of the 3, kidnappers. Inigo and Fezzik and Vizzini. All 3 doing the exact same thing, morally wrong, kidnapping a princess and trying to kill Wesley. Whereas you really can only consider one of them an actual bad guy. The other 2 are good guys throughout the story.
It's like their hands are tied for most of it.
Right.
Because they had nowhere else to go.
Right. And they're doing stuff that they think is right.
I guess it is a lot more morally gray than I'm giving it credit for, but I do like just the binary good and bad sometimes.
Oh, it's still there. It's still something to talk about.
But it does show how, good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things.
Okay.
Last question I wanted to bring up before we end the video is, let's say in a hypothetical scenario, we totally get rid of the binary. There is no longer a movie that expressively and objectively has one good guy fighting one bad guy. And every movie is this gray area. Where do you think movies would go after that? Would they revert back to binary to try and go back to its roots and bring up that magic? Or do you think we would enter into some new moral thing.
At that point, you just get rid of conflict altogether. Everything is the Teletubbies, but nobody spills anything.
Cut. No, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of an interesting question.
I know, it's kind of hard to think about since we're not there quite yet. It's all hypothetical.
I honestly don't think binary will ever go away in the first place.
I don't think so either, because we do have to have kids' cartoons. I mean, something needs to play while you're babysitting.
Obviously.
And just to make the point again, binary isn't a bad thing. Having things black and white. It can be really good if that's the way it needs to be for your movie, but also having, complex gray areas can make a movie really good as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both good, and we shouldn't get rid of either one.
Right.
I do like how there are movies that are going more towards the, again, morally gray, the more mature styles of storytelling, where it's not just, good guy versus bad guy. There's so many interesting stories to tell if it's just gray area. However, I do also like just having a good guy and bad guy sometimes.
Sometimes it's just easier to swallow. Complexity isn't always the best because, you gotta root for somebody, and sometimes it's better to have it be easier.
I don't need every movie or TV show to be something like Westworld. I sometimes want Criminal Minds or something where it's always, the good guys and they always catch the bad guys at the end of the episode,
Yeah.
That's true. And there are some things where you're not rooting for anybody. Like, you ever seen The Walking Dead? Hate all those people, hope they all die. But the other people are bad too. It's like, I don't really care who comes out victor.
Fair enough. Well, guys, thanks for indulging me in this conversation. I think we had a really good discussion here. To sum up, basically, a lot of popular movie franchises and just movies in general are moving to kind of a morally gray area with their characters, making it more complex, making more and more layers for us as the viewers to dig through and pull things out that we can relate to. Please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This is kind of a touchy subject when it comes to morals and defining what's good, what's bad. We don't want to name anything, but in terms of movies, tell us your thoughts, comment those below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Or do forget.
You have your agency.
It would be the morally good thing to just like and subscribe and watch all of our videos every Wednesday.
We'll have more film theories coming out soon, so look forward to those as well, of all different varieties. Thanks for watching. This has been Cinema Brawls.